Good evening, everyone. About to get this show started. We're going to talk about what you need to know as a diesel truck owner or a diesel mechanic. Sorry about losing your chat box. I got it back though. Should be popping up. Hello everyone. Angel, what's up? Sorry about your chat. It was online. Hello everyone. Rochester, New York. Edward West, what's up? Out of Lubbock. Appreciate your support. Great customer, also a great viewer. We appreciate your support. Angel, what's going on? We in Texas. Good evening, everyone. I got the fresh coffee. We're about to talk about what needs to be known as a diesel mechanic and a truck owner. So if you want to add anything in as a truck driver or as a diesel technician, make sure to hit it up in the chat. If you want your comment highlighted, be sure to hit us up on Super Chat. I got a new chat link here, so should be interesting. If you guys are passing through the DFW area and you're looking for express, expert service, professional service, check us out. All our information is in the description box. What's up, Alfredo? Let's get this show on the road. All right, good evening, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm Adam with TAT Express. I see the chat. Let me change something up on the chat real quick. All right, there we go. So I got this new chat link, and I know we're going to be talking about diesel maintenance and what you need to know. Just getting the show started, letting everybody get on. Appreciate everyone that's joining us this evening. Working like always. Yep, the early workers. They're probably turning it down. I should be turning it down as well. I'm an early worker as well, but I'll work into the evening as well. There we go. We got some chat. Angel, appreciate that comment. Yeah, I mention that all the time, man. You always want to get the right. Well, you could try. I know I've grown from that same situation. How's my audio sound? I've grown from that same situation. I'll share a story with you. When I first started my shop, I remember working all holidays and we're installing transmissions and when we used to install transmissions before we could able to get to where we're at now, which I'll share with you later, but I had a makeshift transmission, and luckily the transmissions back then there's hardly any automated systems. Any automated systems were the same box style as a regular manual. It was just with the XY on top. So the bottom of the transmissions are flat, so you can build a and I don't recommend this at all. I do not recommend this because transmissions are very heavy. They're about 800 pounds. They vary from about 800 pounds. Very heavy. It's not a car transmission. You're not. So if they can kill you. 800 pounds is very heavy. So I made this makeshift transmission jack that was a car jack, and we put a plate on it. Shout out to my tío. He always used to makeshift stuff every time we didn't have tools available. So he made this thing, and that's what we used to get the transmissions down, and we would strap it with a strap, and it was very dangerous and very tough. And the reason why I bring this up is because the comment that you just mentioned about the tool that you had to get, I wanted to I just remembered not having the alignment tools as well. And when you're wrestling that big of a transmission, and the clutch as well, the clutch is massive. The clutch is about more than 100 pounds. So to be able to put that clutch up on the flywheel it takes a lot of strength and kind of positioning yourself. So, and the misalignment is one thing, and not being able to get that transmission in there, because now with the newer transmission jacks, you're able to level it out. You're able to, because when you stab a transmission in, you have to kind of figure out exactly the angle of how the truck is in the engine. You don't just make the transmission level and you think that it's going to go in. You got to make it level to the engine, of course. So some people will worry about just having the transmission level when they have the front end raised, and now the engine is slanted. So you have to slant that transmission to get that. If the engine's slanted, you got to slant the transmission as well to get it stabbed in there. So trying to do that, I remember trying to do that, or actually doing that. And as soon as you line up a transmission, it's just it'll go in. But an 800-pound transmission pushing it in, and then you got to ensure your forks line up correctly to the clutch, because if you get a misalignment on the clutch is one thing, but misaligning those forks and then bolting down the transmission, once you bolt down that transmission, you can break the actual clutch, the brand new clutch, because it's not aligned right. But yeah, I remember that. Shout out to you. Good comment. Appreciate that chat. So what I wanted to discuss this evening on items that you need to know as a owner operator or as a diesel technician. And there's a lot of things that are out there. There's a lot of information that's out there, but mostly I wanted to hover around preventive maintenance and filters. Mostly just filters. When I have a short that got repurposed that's out there now about changing your fuel filters more earlier rather than later. And this is something that really truck drivers and owners and technicians should know, so they can advise their customers as well. And also as an owner operator, it's good to know when, and I'm talking about all filters. I'm not just talking about fuel filters or oil filters. Of course, your oil filters is going to be done with your PM, but I'm talking about air filters. We're talking about filters in your DEF filters, your DPF filters, your dryer filters. All these filters that are on a truck, your cab filter, all these filters are made to be changed out. They're made to be interchanged. So when they go for a really long time, you can definitely cause damage and definitely cause some issues. Filters being changed at 500,000 miles or less than 500,000 miles on your DPFs is very important. That's something that's new if you guys are running anything that with the after treatment system. I mention this often in my broadcast that the bake and blowing process is not up to date and is not accepted by OEM standards for any kind of warranty work or anything like that. Anything that gets repeated or comebacks of the same problem, if it's repaired by a baked and blown filter and not a OEM swap filter that's been cleaned and tested, and all these different standards that they go by to ensure that you won't have a comeback, that definitely is the way to go. Fuel filters. Now, I have the video that's being repurposed now on diesel fuel filters. That's something that I've brought up, and it's tough. I had a chat, someone in the chat not too long ago that mentioned about having a hesitation after putting fuel, and I think he was pretty concerned. He didn't have any recent repairs or anything like that, so it was really concerning to him about why he had these check engine, well, actually just engine derating. No check engine lights. I asked him about that. I asked him about check engine lights. There were no check engine lights. He just mentioned he had a loss of power. He did mention that he got it fuel at a location where he regularly doesn't get fuel. So he was suspecting that it was the fuel that was giving him problems. Is my music too loud in the background? How you guys hear me? Oh, it's not too bad. I don't have my headset on because I didn't want my. Sometimes those headsets can get uncomfortable after a while. I just thought the music was too loud, but I appreciate you guys joining us. So yeah, the viewer, the guy in the chat, he didn't know. He suspected the fuel. He made comments about, hey, what could it be? There wasn't a check engine light. Not every time you're gonna get a check engine light when you have a problem with fuel. When it's very severe, then you will get a check engine light. So we suspected he put bad fuel in, and he was gonna go ahead and just run that tank and change the fuel filters and put another set of fuel filters. Now, fuel filter OEM, it's very, I discuss or I reference OEM a lot when it comes to repairs, but and sometimes OEM could be incorrect when it comes to, in this case, their intervals when it comes to replacing their fuel filters. They're not, I don't believe they're factoring in the different contaminants that can possibly be in the fuel. And because I don't see those fuel filters, the secondary fuel filters that are on the rail, that are frame mounted is what they call them, the frame mounted filter. That one they recommend around 20,000 miles, and I feel like that's really high. Now, they also recommend higher intervals on your oil changes for your PMs, which that's something that I always bring up in a lot of my broadcasts. If you do extended intervals, be sure to run an oil analysis, because oil analysis are always going to give you basically an insight on what your fuel or what your oil looks like. It's the bloodline of your system. So definitely get that done. Don't overlook your DPF filters. The bacon blowing process is outdated. I wouldn't go with the filter changes at 20,000 miles. That's high, especially, and this is why, especially with these these fuel pumps that are, and the reason why they're like two-stage fuel pumps. They're not putting separate fuel pumps. They're not putting a lift pump to bring the fuel from the tanks to the high pressure pump, and then the high pressure pump being able to, of course, do its job and build the high pressure. They're building it all in one. They're building a single pump that is working as a low pressure pump and a high pressure pump, being gear driven. So using the diesel fuel as a lubricant, an internal lubricant, is not internal. It's not lubricated by oil. These pumps are lubricated by the fuel that's being fed to them. And as you know, fuel is very oily and dirty. So all this combined, even though these high pressure fuel systems are a lot more advanced, they are more susceptible to damage when it comes to contaminants like water, asphaltene, as I mentioned in my videos. And if you're more interested in getting more information on that, just check out those other videos. But as an owner or operator, as a technician, I would recommend replacing them earlier than that. Some intervals can be different on some models, but most of the time when it comes to fuel systems, I would definitely, especially with the high pressure fuel systems, try to save those, because once damage occurs, and there has been updates, there's a lot of new updates that are not requesting that you replace a lot of the components. They're wanting you to go step by step replacing components instead of condemning components on a fuel system after a failure. But a lot of this damage is happening from dirty fuel, and a lot of these repairs that we have coming to our shop are coming down to whether or not preventive maintenance was in place, whether or not preventive maintenance was done. And even if it comes to any hardware breaking down, it's the same. We get the same results if it's hardware or if it's anything else. If the aftertreatment system or any kind of sensors that get clogged up, anything like that, we can have some issues. I appreciate everyone that's joined us this evening. I was debating whether or not I was gonna go live. I took all day to get this studio moved around. So I hope you guys are having a good evening. So we're talking about filters and what you need to know as a truck owner. Alfredo's in the house. I replaced an ABS rear axle on a truck. Yellow light went off, but the dash is still gets the code. Have you drove it around? Have you drove it around? Alfredo says he's got an ABS rear axle that he replaced, and the yellow light went off on the dash, but the dash is still gets the code. You might have to clear it out. If it's not showing active, then it could still be active, but it may need to be driven to verify that it's active, or it could need to be driven to for the verification or the active to go away. Appreciate everyone that's joined us this evening. I appreciate everyone's patience. It's been a long day today, and as I was going to turn it down, I didn't want to leave you guys hanging this evening, so I wanted to talk about this topic and also answer any of your questions or concerns that you got out there. I somehow misplaced. Okay, we talked about it. I got Angel's comment there. Talked about his misalignment on the tool. We're talking about what you need to know. That's a good question there, or a good comment. I'd like to re-highlight that comment. He mentioned that he got the wrong tool whenever he was working on a particular truck, and I did tell you a story about not having a tool and a brake, or the damage happening, or extra work. So that's definitely something to know as a technician. I appreciate you sharing that. We can add that to our list of items that you need to know. If you're working on trucks, having the right equipment is very important. And if we're talking about changing fuel filters, now and I mentioned all the different models that are out there. There is different types of tools that you're gonna need to work on different types of trucks. So you kind of you're gonna have to do your research on what equipment that you have and get familiar with your equipment to be able to do these types of items on your own, like maintenance, replacing your fuel filters. That rail mount that I mentioned, that frame mounted filter, has a weird type of circle wrench that you put over the fuel filter housing, and you have to get a decent one. I would recommend getting a decent one, because when you're kind of breaking that loose, sometimes it's pretty tight. So if you get one of those cheap thin ones, then it's just going to get all flimsy, and you're not going to be able to get a good arc on it, or a good torque on it is what I meant. Excuse me. You're not going to be able to get good torque on it and be able to break that loose to open it. As for some of these fuel filters like a DD15, I wouldn't recommend doing these on your own as an owner operator. As a technician, of course, get all your right tools. Make sure you're not over torquing it. Make sure you're inspecting these fuel filter caps, because a lot of this hardware for the fuel filter system is plastic now, even the filters that go in there. So that is not the plastic. It's easy to cross thread the housing or aluminum. You're using a big steel, you're using your big ratchet. Some people don't even get the correct star or point socket. They'll get like a 16 point, and it calls for a small something smaller than that. If you get the wrong socket and you're trying to take off these filter housings and they're plastic and you're bearing down on them and they go to strip, they're gonna strip easier because you're using metal tools, and of course it's a plastic housing. So be careful and be cautious when replacing those. Other filters I'd like to bring up, as I mentioned, is the air filters and cab filters. We're getting into AC season. Right now, we're right at April. This is spring, so we're not that hot yet. We're getting warm. in Texas, thankfully, we get all seasons every day. So we'll be real cold in the morning, hot in the afternoon, and then cold again in the evening. That's just how Texas is. But if you're using your air conditioning system, if you're having to use your heater system, you're putting a lot of strain on that filter as well. Think about the filter when you're going into dusty areas. If you're going into yards where you're transferring trailers and they haven't put pavement down in those yards and it's gravel, or you're in off-road conditions getting a lot of dust. Now, this can clog up everything inside your evaporator and cause your AC system and your heater system to degrade over time. And if you would change out that air filter, cab filter, then you could save you some time, definitely save you some money. So I know that since I'm on the filters on the air, and we're talking about dust and what dust and dirt does, it's even more dangerous when it comes to dealing with your air filter on your engine. Now your air filter on the engine is very important because, as I mentioned, dust can get in there, dirt can get in there. Now dirt's very abrasive. Now the damage that can be caused by dirty air filters is so extent that some OEMs actually went into making a whole I would say basically just a whole study about and giving it its own name. That one is basically called dust out. So when dust out occurs, it's when so much dust enters the cylinder that it ends up scratching the sides of the cylinder, because oil, of course, is very tacky. So when that dirt actually can make it into the cylinder and bypasses the air filter because it's getting so dirty, then that dirt will cause a lot of damage. It's like adding sandpaper into the cylinders, and it just damages it out. So that is in severe cases. I'm not trying to scare you guys. If you have been a little bit extended on your air filter, maybe a year, okay, you shouldn't see dust out. Dust out's gonna occur in very dusty conditions. If you're running fracs, if you're out there in the oil fields and you're nothing but dust, those are the drivers and owners and technicians that really need to pay more attention. If they're out in the dusty desert areas where there's nothing but dirt. So if you're around highways and stuff like that, then your air filter could last you a little bit longer. I wouldn't 100% count on that restrictor meter, that flow restriction meter that they made on the filter housings. I don't see them on the newer models, but they had these gauges that would they were designed to give you a wear indicator, a visual wear indicator on when to change out your air filter by measuring the amount of suction it's taking the turbo to get adequate air from the air filter. And all they would do was just put that gauge in between the turbo intake and the air filter, and so it's measuring the airflow. So if that air filter would get clogged, then it would create more suction in that area where this meter is reading, and you would see the gauge go down, and that's how that gauge would work. Now the reason why I'm mentioning this gauge is because it is not accurate. I wouldn't go by that. So air filters are very important. We're talking about filters all around the truck, preventive maintenance in general, but filters to be exact on when it comes to what you need to know about keeping up with your semi truck. So as I mentioned, dust out is only going to be in severe issues and severe cases. Appreciate everyone that's joined us this evening. Mo's got a question here in the chat. If you want your question highlighted, be sure to hit us up on chat, super chat if that's available. What I got here is, what are the symptoms of a bad automatic transmission? Allison transmission. Let me see. You got another additional comment here. Let's see here. Can transmission cause vibration acceleration? So yes, he's asking us about he's asking me, he's got a symptom with a bad automatic transmission. He's like, what are the symptoms? Okay. First of all, I'm glad that you brought the transmission issue up, because in the video that I released about maintenance on the transmission, in the comments, I do mention to make sure to check your manuals on oil change intervals for your transmissions. Now, those are items that I do recommend that you can follow on the engines. They're without oil analysis, I wouldn't go that far. Now, transmissions, the reason why I bring that up is because in the video I said 50,000 miles, and the reason why I said that is because those are on older transmissions, and I was trying to cover a broad area of transmissions, and most transmissions that we see fail with the oil leaks or leaking on the ground are the older transmissions. So that's kind of why I was mentioning 50. But if you have an automated system, a new modern, I would check OEM, because most of them are around the 500,000 mile mark, as long as also with your gearbox. Now back to the question in the chat is asking about will the transmission cause vibration on vibration? And it will. That is one way to troubleshoot a drivetrain issue or driveline issue is if the vibration goes away after acceleration, because now you're taking the force off of the driveline, so there shouldn't be vibration, or there should be vibration. When there's vibration, when you apply torque to the driveline, that's whenever that's indicating that there's a problem in the driveline. When the vibration goes away after acceleration, you're taking the tension off the driveline, so then it would take the vibration away. Now that is not particularly saying that it's gonna be your transmission. It actually can be a driveline problem. It could be a carrier bearing. It could be something going on with your differentials, which is something that I would definitely get checked out. What we used to do, and I'm not recommending you guys do this if you're not set up correctly as a shop. I don't recommend you do this, but we would raise the back end of the truck and just one of the axles, of course, chock it and run it to see if we can see stationary and see if we can see the vibration, kind of isolate here where it's coming from, try to isolate where this vibration is coming from, because it can be tricky to find a vibration on the road. A transmission, an automated transmission, usually would not give you that type of symptom. If you're having vibration on acceleration and it's going away off acceleration, you should not have that type of a problem going on in the transmission. That sounds more like a driveline problem, Mo. So if you're a technician or a driver, if you're a technician, check it out. If you're a driver, get it checked out. Possibly something on your driveline. Since we're talking about boxes, we're talking about transmissions, and I mentioned a differential. One comment that came through on one of the comments from the viewer was very good. He said that gear oil is a lot less expensive, or oil is a lot less expensive than metal. And I thought that was very simple, and I might not be quoting it exactly the way he said it, but in that way he said oil is cheaper than metal, which basically makes sense, because the oil is lubricating the metal. And it's going in line with maintenance. If you're skipping out on maintenance, usually a 3-box change is going to be 500,000 miles every 5 years. Depends. Check your OEM to be for sure. Check your OEM manual. But if you're not changing out that oil and you burn up a box, you burn up a transmission, it's way more expensive. So I'm talking about changing filters out, and we're moving over to oil changes on your 3-box systems. Some transmissions, the modern transmissions, do have filter cartridges as well. So check your OEM, preventive maintenance as an owner operator and as a technician. Now, I know that in the video on the transmission maintenance, I did mention about 50,000 miles, but as I mentioned, I was trying to cover older transmissions all the way up to newer transmissions. Be sure to check out your OEM. Hello to everyone that's joined us this evening. I hope everyone likes this new chat box layout. I like it. It's more visible. The last one we had, you couldn't really see anything. It was really blocked up. I was not keeping up with the comments as they come in, but I'll come back to them. I got too many displays up. Eddie Gomez is out there working. Shout out to Eddie. Unless he was just talking about my connection at the earlier. That's probably what that was. What engine do you like? Is it more dependable, the Cummins X15 or Detroit 15, DD15? Thanks for that question. One of my last broadcasts asked me that question, or on the last broadcast they did, and I would say anything that has a good maintenance is going to be a dependable engine. I'm not leaning to one towards the other. I did release the DD15 when it comes to reliable engine. Each truck has a flaw and each truck has a good thing. If whatever truck that you have, just like anything, you're gonna have to put some time into understanding what your equipment needs so that you can keep it up, or you can depend on a shop. If you're in the DFW area and you'd like to get service with TAT Express, we are available for heavy duty, medium duty, light duty, and RV service. Check our credentials. We have professional express professional service ready to go. Check us out. All our information is in the description. Give us a call or check us out. We'll be more than happy to help because it's a lot. This is a lot to keep up with as an owner. Or a technician. Information's all going to be out here. But if you're looking for getting this done on your own, go ahead and get it done. If you're looking to get a shop, we're here to go. I would say my answer to your question on which one's best, Cummins 15 or Detroit DD15, I would say whichever one has the best maintenance, whichever one they both are producing around the same power. Now, if both of them were equal and they both had good maintenance, I would probably select the DD15 just because I've done more head failures and they don't have replaceable injector cups on the X15. The X15 is one of the first designs when they went with a single head cam, eliminating the injector cam, moving over to a high pressure system, which is a good move. But whenever there's designs that change in an engine, it takes a few years for them to kind of iron out the flaws of that engine, and that could take anywhere from 3 to 4 years. And you can see that with a lot of engines that come out. When a new engine comes out or a new design comes out, either overhauling the fuel system or changing the whole fuel system, it may take a couple of things to iron out before that happens. Alexander Grow, I am a factory trained Volvo Mac technician. Should I start my own channel? If you'd like to, go ahead. I mean, the audience is there. If you have information to share, go ahead. There's gonna be people out there looking for it. There's gonna be people searching whatever information. I was taking care of some stuff over the weekend, and even with all the production that we do now and the videos that we do, everything is being searched online. So if you have information to share, I would definitely push you out there and get it done. You have to have a reason. You have to have a reason for the channel. Research reasons for channels and go from there. But I appreciate you joining us this evening, Alexander, and appreciate you joining the industry. I know Volvo Mac, they train really well. I've been able to send one of my guys only. I haven't been able to send more, but because of the class availabilities. But there was they do offer training. They just that's actually with every manufacturer OEM. They offer out training to outside shops, but they will not give you the certifications. They only give them to people that actually work for the dealers to try to keep those technicians, I guess. Why does a DD15 or the DD13 rev jump slightly during idle? Now, we have somebody in the chat. In chat says, why does a DD15 and the DD13 have an idling surge? Now, that actually is an error. That's a fault. That's gonna be your quantity control valve that's on the fuel pump of the DD15 or DD13, same design. Now, that is a solenoid that works with the fuel pump, and that solenoid is supposed to regulate the fuel at idle, but it could get stuck. It can get stuck, and that's what causes that. Now, if you have a high mileage, and not excuse my audio, but if you have a high mileage on that fuel pump, I would recommend go ahead and replace the fuel pump completely if it's a high mileage. Now, that's a great chat. I'm glad you were able to get this out on the chat, because I'm mentioning filters. Now, changing out fuel filters again, circling back to that, this is another reason why it's a good idea to replace the fuel filters, because these high pressure systems they're making these hybrid pumps, and they're getting the job done. But not only is it a lift pump, it's also regulating your idle. So that is a single component that can be replaced. But I'm only recommending the pump because I myself have replaced a quantity control valve many times. I would say several times on high mileage pumps, and later on for that pump to go bad and have to redo the work, I would, if the pump has high mileage on it already, then I would recommend going ahead and replacing that pump. I apologize for it's already 9 p.m. I've been up since 6 a.m. So appreciate that comment though. I'm reading your comments down here on my display, but I like how they're popping up over here. Looks nice. Better than before. We changed the oil filter, fuel filter, air filter on the fleet that we maintain every 10,000 to 12,000 miles regardless. Appreciate that. Angel says that they changed the air filter, fuel filter, oil filter every 10 to 12,000 miles regardless. That's a pretty strict schedule. Idle surge, Alexander, the factory train Volvo Mac says idle surge, usually high pressure fuel pump going bad. Check your pre-screen fuel filter or for metal. Appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, it could be a bad fuel pump. It's very common. You see it on the DD15s and DD13s. And I'd like to mention if you're getting training, it's good. But there's nothing like hands-on training. There's nothing like it. If you have the combination of two, being able to read literature and have hands-on and put your literature to work, that's even better learning environment, I believe. Because it's one thing. When I was in the military, we would, of course they train you for the longest, but when it comes to actually doing it, it's completely different. And I guess that's in every case. But when you create, like, if you can train and work on the equipment at the same time and implement your training right away, it's more thorough. And as you're able to develop and not just wait for training to happen, if you're able to self-train by reading in, because a lot of this training courses that you take, are available to you already. It's just taking the initiative of reading it on your own and researching it on your own. A lot of the guy, back to Alexander that's in chat, he asked about a channel. Before I started a channel, I didn't know anything about YouTube, so I researched everything, and we do the same. And that's the type of learning training environment culture that we like to keep in our shop. And this is kind of why I try to promote our services so much, because we are professionals and we do take the job serious. We have procedures in place. We try not to look over any procedures. So if you're looking for service as a local driver, or if you own a fleet, if you certainly looking for service on a fleet, if you can't handle your fleet anymore, if you're looking to outsource it, if you're looking for a solid shop, or if you have an RV, getting it ready for the summertime, if you got light duty trucks, fleets trucks, if service trucks that need any kind of Fords, F-250s, anything like that, give us a shout. Check us out. All our information is in the description box. We have tons of viewers and customers as well, so check us out. Back to the questions. How do you know if your fuel pump or turbo is going out? Well, that's two different things. Would you replace scratched airbag that's not leaking? If it looks like any of the threads of the airbag, of the rubber, if it looks dangerous, like if it's really deep gash, then yes, replace it. I mean, if there's any damage on your bag, yeah, go ahead and replace it. If you're saying a scratch, if it's noticeable, if it's really bad, then yeah, it's just gonna wear out faster. You're gonna have to replace it sooner rather than later. Angel was making a comment about the fuel filter tool that I was mentioning, that are the cheap ones. He said that those always bend after a while, and they can cause damage to the collar. Exactly, they actually can't cause damage to the fuel filter assembly itself. It's so important to change that cabin air filter and the bunk air filter at every interval. Sometimes you need to check and make sure. I've seen an air filter get neglected, a cab air filter, and they're gonna start coming in, especially when it gets really hot. So be ready. If you're a driver or anyone that's working on trucks, be ready for this heat that's about to come in. So get those air filters replaced, get your AC checked out so that you'll be prepared for this season. But I've seen an air filter so bad that it got sucked into the evaporator section of the air box, and it was almost impossible to get out. Now the newer ones won't allow that, but it was bad. There was a lot of issues with that AC system, but I think it was the drip line was bad, so it was creating a lot of condensation collection in the evaporator. That, along with a dirty air filter, what I believe happened is the dirty air filter, of course, was, once it got filled, it started passing dirt, and that dirt mixed with the condensation of the evaporator. When that happens, that creates kind of mud, of course, dirt and water and mud, clogs up the drip line. The drip line gets clogged up. Now you have too much water, too much condensation. This condensation doesn't have anywhere to go. It fills into the evaporator box, and either you have water in your floor that's not coolant on your floor dash, or other problems, low cooling. It's a mess. But yeah, definitely can cause some problems, those any cheap tools. But I understand if somebody needs to get started, you want to get started. But for the long run, and as a diesel technician, ASC certified diesel technician, I would say don't go cheap on the tools or labor. It can definitely pay costs you more in the long run. My clutch has a little vibration when I push it down to the floor. Stanley, thank you for that comment. He says his clutch has a little bit of vibration when he puts it to the floor. That may be an indicator of a clutch, or you maybe need an adjustment. I would need more information. Definitely would get it checked out. If it has high mileage, could be a clutch, suspected clutch. When it comes to the topic of this video, when I'm talking about filters and preventive maintenance, that would be the first item that I would ask when trying to troubleshoot any complaint. Would be preventive maintenance. When is the clutch? How long has the clutch been replaced? Clutch replacement is not part of preventive maintenance, but if you would say 800,000 miles on the truck and the clutch has original clutch, then we could suspect the clutch. We would have to inspect the clutch, see where the throwout bearing is relative to the clutch housing, inspect it. That would give us a better idea. Hear it. That would kind of help us isolate whether or not it's a clutch. It's interesting. What makes you suspect that it's the clutch is something I would like to know. Baldwin says, I got a Volvo D16. In the morning at initial startup, it takes a long crank. Sometimes I have to turn the key off and re-crank it. Then it would start up. Also, when I drive it initially, it would hesitate until it gets about 190 degrees. Then it would drive just fine throughout the day. Okay, so D16, same setup as D13s. We see most common on D13s, D16s as well is, now I'm not going to be able to just give you the exact problem. Now, a hard start, you're losing the prime. It's is the problem is the truck's turned off. It loses the prime, which means it loses the fuel that's ready to be put into the injectors due to gravity. It gets pulled down from where it is at the head all the way back down to the fuel filter, or from the fuel filter housing back down to the tanks. Now there's check valves that are designed to create that backflow, that flow from flowing back into the fuel tank. So what happens is these check valves could go bad. Now, where to isolate the problem, that's one thing. Okay, now you're mentioning that once it's started, it runs fine, or once it's warmed up. Most diesel engines, they don't have any kind of igniter like a spark plug or anything. They ignite off what it's called thermal combustion, which is just heat. So there's not a spark plug that ignites the diesel. It's just the piston being pushed up so quickly and the compression being happen so fast of that air that it gets so hot that it can ignite the diesel fuel, and that's what creates a thermal combustion. Now, the reason why I bring this up, because heat plays a big factor on how an engine can create power, because if it's not warmed up enough, or it's not at operating temperature, then it's going to struggle even more to create more power, and it's going to create less power because of a cooler thermal combustion. So you can never troubleshoot a diesel engine when it's not at operating temperature. Now, what I could suggest that we can do to help you isolate your hard start problem on your D16 is, before you try to start in the morning, there's the primer on the fuel filter housing. Try to prime it to see if that starts. Now, there are troubleshooting procedures that we take, and it comes with a kit. The kit will help. What the kit does is it isolates where the fuel's coming, where the air is getting into the system, because you don't have an airlock system. So air is getting in the system through the check valve failure, which is not a replaceable part. It's in the fuel filter housing. It could be in the injectors. It could be in a fuel line. So what we do is, first we run this aerated fuel test. There's procedures on Volvos And there's procedures on pretty much anything when it comes to troubleshooting any kind of faulty system. And I mentioned this before, is we got to isolate it. So the procedures are testing this, testing that, isolating. Okay, well, it's not this, and this is what that test kit does. We have to install different fuel test lines to see, okay, are we getting aerated fuel? Okay, we are getting aerated fuel. So now I'm going to cancel out the fuel tanks by drawing a line straight to the input of the fuel pump into a 5-gallon bucket, or a separate, canceling out all the fuel lines from the pump to the back to see if I'm still getting air out of my return. Now I'm seeing air from the return because it's bubbles in my fuel. Now these are tests. This is test. Now we go, and now we can isolate all the way up to see where, if we lose air. Okay, now I'm not losing air when I cancel my fuel lines from the tank. So now I know that I got a problem on fuel lines from my tank. Okay, now there's another test that puts a visual line, a clear line through your fuel filter, testing your fuel filter module to see if that's bad. Mostly, if you have high mileage, it's going to be the fuel filter housing, or it's going to be some injector cups or a bad injector. You're going to have to isolate it. Hopefully it's just a fuel filter housing, and it's not like a cup or something, or a bad injector. Some of these injectors were designed on the Volvo's design, where they would seal, the bottom of the injector would seal on the bottom of the cup by force. Over a time, they can lose that seal. So that's another test that needs to be done. My apologies for not being able to give you an exact answer, but I would definitely run the fuel filter, trying to isolate the aerated fuel to see where you're losing it at. If you have loss of power only when it's cool, then it probably wouldn't be aerated fuel. More than likely it could just be the fuel filter module. But it's not a cheap repair, it's not a cheap part. So even though these procedures that I'm mentioning could be excessive, I would still recommend getting it done so that you can isolate what it actually is. Because if it is a cup or it is an injector and you replace the fuel filter housing, you're going to have to replace that fuel filter housing in one way or another in the life of that engine either way. So a lot of these parts would need to be replaced because of all the failures that happen. But definitely check that out. Get it checked out by someone that's familiar with the fuel system. And I don't mean to make your symptoms more, I don't mean to make them sound larger than they are, but I've troubleshot these before. I get a little bit of pressure because I don't want to give you the wrong answer. We don't like that happening at the shop. So then we depend on the procedures to isolate the problem correctly before condemning a part. And a lot of times it's required to have some sort of proof of a failed part before getting it replaced. And those items are put in place so that we don't have a part that's been replaced and it doesn't fix the actual initial problem. But good question. Thanks for that question out here on chat. I'll make sure I check the transmission, gear oil, and both rear ends every 10 to 20,000, 12,000 miles. I make sure that my finger is clean, so that I make sure. Appreciate that. He talks about Angel A-Rod says that he checks the differential and transmission every 10 to 12,000 miles. Appreciate that. I'm a cat man, but I love a Series 60. Cats are good, man. Cats are good engines, and one of the reasons I don't recommend the engine. It's a good engine. I'm not saying that I wouldn't want the engine, but it's just very high engine to keep up with when it comes to breakdowns. And when they fails, they're hard. They're really strong engines. We had a Cat 15 C15 twin turbo, very strong engine. It was pre-emissions engine. very strong engine, but we had an issue with it overheating and it had a cracked head. So that was very expensive compared to other repairs. Humberto, what do you think about the fleet air filters? We run those on our trucks. What do you think about spinner tube bypass filter? I'm not too familiar with the spinner tube bypass filters, but if you're using aftermarket filters, there should be specs, and as long as they fall in line with specs that you have, if you are replacing the air filter and it meets the specs of OEM specs when it comes to air filters, then yeah, go ahead and replace it. And you can see the quality in them. You'll be able to see the quality just by holding the difference, the two in your hands. You can see the quality. And the fast pumps, my brother installed on his ISX, and he noticed a quieter high pressure pump, and another claim fast makes the system last longer. Any comments on that? So a fast system, Humberto is saying that he has a brother that installed a fast system. A fast system is basically a lift pump with a fuel filter on it. Yes, they will help. They will help in a lot of cases. You're filtering your fuel more, and you're taking the strain off of the fuel pump that I mentioned, that has the lift pump designed on it, the regulator designed on it, and the high pressure. So it's like 3 pumps in one, some hybrid pump. So yeah, it does help. It does help. You know, I haven't seen the performance on dynos, and if you cannot, what I don't like, the only thing that has me against after market fuel additives or filtration systems is now where you have to add more hoses, more fuel lines. There's just more fuel lines you have to deal with. Same with the oil. You know, adding any kind of additional filtration system, now you're adding more lines to the system that could just be susceptible to failure. I would check that. I also was wondering if it could be fuel filter housing. Yeah. Hopefully I was able to get that. It could be a fuel filter housing. Got another chat comment on the same D16 that had a hard start. Yeah, I would definitely say it could be the fuel filter. That's not something that would be out of the ordinary on that. K&M makes cabin air filters for some semi-truck brands. There are some decent aftermarket parts. As long as they meet the criteria of OEM parts, you should be good. And you can see the quality in the filters as well. What's up, Jesse? Jesse Soto, shout out from Austin. I wonder if Jesse Soto's my relative. I got a relative named Jesse Soto. How do you know if the turbo is going out? There's different indicators of a bad turbo. What are your problems? A bad turbo usually going to be throwing out oil from one side or the other. But as I mentioned before, you have to ensure that it's troubleshot correctly, because I know I just mentioned that it could, if it's passing oil, but if the oil is not freely flowing through the turbo and drain back down to the engine by the oil drain tube, then it can fill up and go back. If the air filter is clogged up, sometimes it can suck oil. If you have too much crankcase pressure, it can push oil. But if all those cases aren't happening, if you have a clean crankcase filter, is not overdue and pushing oil, if your oil drawback tube on your turbo is not clogged, and you can take the inlet part of the turbo and check the inlet part of the turbo by removing the where the air filter goes down into the turbo intake. You would take that off and then check the tubing in there. There's a tubing in there. Sorry, I hear something. There's the turbine wheel. You would see if there's extra play in the turbine wheel. If the turbine wheel spins freely and it's not hitting up against the wall, then it's okay. But if it's hitting up against the wall a little bit, then, and it has a little bit of play, more than usual, and you can feel it not being rotating well, then yeah, that could be a bad turbo. Could definitely be a bad turbo. I'm gonna be releasing a video. I'm gonna try to get it out tomorrow. I was gonna get it out this evening, but I was working all day, moving the studio around, and then getting getting all this back up. This new chat. Hope you guys like it. But I shot some videos that were getting produced. I'm gonna be shooting some more information out to you. All this new information, and that information, it was basically trying to chase down where oil was coming from, because it looked like it was coming from a turbo, but we ended up finding out it was coming from the valve seals on the head, because of course the turbo is bolted onto the exhaust, so oil was passing through the seals on the valve seals in the head, pushing it out the exhaust, and then going into the turbo, making it look like it was a turbo leaking. Good question, Trucker, sorry. Hi there, I have a DD15 Freightliner Cascadia 2016 reading 0 on the oil pressure gauge sometimes. Can it be faulty wiring? 0 on the oil sometimes. You wouldn't just get sometimes low oil pressure. That does sound like a connection problem or electrical problem. Could be something in the wiring. Should shut it down. I would definitely verify. It shouldn't go all the way to 0. Does it shut the truck off? I mean, because you went to 0. If you went to 0, actually, that engine would burn up. We have an engine in the shop that lost oil pressure and locked up. Jesse says diagnosis is key. Yes, sir. Anything pre-emission was better. Well, and what stands when it comes to, I know that you say that, I guess because you don't have to deal with, it's less maintenance, but the newer engines, they're producing some power. Spinner filters. Oh, okay, you were talking about the spin-on metal filters, or cartridge filters, or no spin-on and paper liner. Yep. Well, most filters are just paper anyway, but they're either paper or spin-on. But a lot of the modern engines are going into are cartridges now instead of spin-on. Jesse's got a question. He says, if there's a whistling noise coming from near the turbo, knowing the turbo is good, would it be the engine manifold? If the turbo is good and you're hearing a whistling noise, it's more than likely you just have a leak somewhere. You can do a boost leak test, which would test the code side of the turbo system. More than likely it could be that side, or it could be the exhaust side. The exhaust side could be checked too with soap and water. Test all the mating joints, the gaskets, to see if they're leaking. Have you ran into an ISX15 having turbo bark at idle? No codes in regen, complete normal, but always has turbo. About to yank the turbo and actuator off to replace it. It's probably the turbo on the ISX15. He's saying that the turbo is making a weird noise at idle. More than likely, yeah, it's going to be the turbo. And the reason why I say that particular turbo is going bad, because those turbos, the ISX15s, have what they call vanes on the inside of them, and the actuator controls that vanes, and it's basically just opening and closing the flow of the turbo to try to create a smaller turbo into a bigger turbo. Are basically just trying to create boost at low RPMs, and then adjusting that when RPMs rise. what over time, soot will get clogged up into those veins. They're basically just like, they call them veins, but they're just pieces of metal that open and close, and they direct the air one way or the other, but they're exposed to exhaust pressure, and of course exhaust pressure has soot, so soot can get built up. A lot of times it gets built up in those veins, and they're not able to operate correctly, which will cause that hesitation, weird noise for you. So yeah, you're on the right track. I appreciate you joining us this evening. I hope everyone had a good broadcast, and everybody had a good live. If you're in the DFW area and you're looking for service, all our information is in the description box. Give us a shout. I'm going to wrap this evening's broadcast up. I hope everyone had a good night. Tomorrow we're at it again. We got to keep on moving, keep on trucking, and keep on making those wheels turn. So guys, thanks for everyone that joined us this evening. Be safe out there, and I'll see you guys next time. Later, guys.